Well, good evening, everyone. On behalf of Hennepin County Library, welcome to tonight's Writer to Writer program, Writing for Young Readers, a conversation between Payal Doshi and Nicole D. Collier, presented in collaboration with More Than a Single Story. My name is Margaret Wilson, and I'm a librarian in the Community Engagement Department for Hennepin County Library. I'd like to thank you all for attending and joining us in enacting the library's mission to inspire, facilitate, and celebrate lifelong learning. Today's program is funded with money from Minnesota's Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund. Our program partner for tonight's event is More Than a Single Story. They've been a partner with the library for many years, and we are so grateful for the conversations and connections they bring to the library community. It is my pleasure to introduce Carolyn Hallbrook. Carolyn Hallbrook is founder and director of More Than a Single Story. Her memoir, Tell Me Your Names and I Will Testify, won the 2021 Minnesota Book Award in Memoir Creative Nonfiction. She is co-editor with David Mura of the anthology We Are Meant to Rise, Voices for Justice from Minneapolis to the World, from the University of Minnesota Press, and is co-author with Dr. Josie Johnson and Arletta Little of Hope in the Struggle, also from the University of Minnesota Press. Her essays have been published in anthologies including A Good Time for the Truth and Blues Vision, African American Writing from Minnesota. Her 2022 TEDx talk, The Life You Live is the Legacy You'll Leave, was presented at Concordia College. Her awards include the Kay Sexton Award in 2010, Hamlin University Exemplary Teacher in 2014, 50 Over 50 in 2017, Celebrate the Sisters in 2020, and Flowers Now in 2024. And she is the 2025 McKnight Distinguished Artist. Please join me in welcoming Carolyn Hallbrook.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. And thank you, Margaret, for that wonderful introduction. So we want to thank everyone for taking time to join us tonight for tonight's edition of Writer to Writer Conversations between BIPOC writers. So just a little bit about More Than a Single Story. We are a Twin Cities-based organization whose mission is to position the literary arts as a catalyst for cross-cultural healing and social justice. We do this through readings, public conversations, writing workshops, and mentorships that foster insight, empathy, and literary skill building. Many thanks to Hennepin County Library, our longtime partner, for supporting this program and many others. And to repeat what Margaret also said, thank yous to the voters of Minnesota for funding from Minnesota's Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund. I am very excited about tonight's conversation partners, two children's book authors who will engage in an honest conversation about writing for young readers. They will talk about the books they write, their creative processes, and the joys and challenges of crafting stories that resonate with kids. They'll also share insights into navigating the publishing world as authors from underrepresented backgrounds and about building community, finding voice, and creating space for authentic stories. So I would like to introduce them, and they can tell us more about themselves. There will also be a Q&A after the conversation, and you can feel free to post questions in the chat or to raise your hand if you prefer to voice your question. So tonight's conversation partners are Payal Doshi. She's the author of Rhea in the Blood of the Nectar, a middle grade fantasy novel, and recipient of the IPPY Gold Award. Her young adult short story, A Confluence of Fates, can be found in the YA anthology, My Big Fat Desi Wedding. Her forthcoming 4-book series of chapter books, Magic Gems, published by Scholastic Incorporated, will be available in 2026. Payal has an MFA in creative writing and fiction from the New School in New York. Born and raised in Mumbai, India, she currently lives with her family in Minnesota. When she isn't writing stories that celebrate her South Asian heritage, you can find her nose deep in a book with a cup of coffee or daydreaming of fantasy realms to send her characters into. And Nicole D. Collier writes warm-hearted stories about learning to be true to yourself. Her books have been nominated for state book awards, earned star reviews, and been named on best of lists. A former elementary school teacher, Nicole champions literacy, critical thinking, imagination, and compassion as essential 21st century skills. Born and raised in Atlanta, she is currently based in sunny St. Petersburg, Florida, where she is daydreaming about her next project. So let's welcome Payal, and Nicole.
Thank you so much, Carolyn. Thank you for that wonderful introduction.
Yay, I'm so excited.
So,
There we go. Hi, everyone. Thank you for spending your evening with us. I'm so excited to be here for the Writer to Writer talk with my dear friend Nicole D. Collier. We actually met in 2021 during the height of the pandemic when our debut middle grade novels were going to be launched, and none of us had any idea how to launch a book in a pandemic. And it was a group called the 20 Wonders, because we were debuting in 2021, that was formed on Slack. And we all came together, and now 5 years later, a few of us have continued to be in touch and support each other and really champion our work. And so that's how Nicole and I got to know each other. We live on opposite, well, kind of. We're in the Midwest. Nicole is in the East Coast.
Way down.
And yep. And I thought, what a wonderful opportunity this would be for us to hang out, talk books and publishing, and yeah, share our stories with all of you. So thank you so much for joining us.
Yay. So we were thinking that we could get started having you all get to know us better by reading our work. So I'm going to read an excerpt first from one of my books, and then we'll kind of go from there. So this is actually my second novel. It's called The Many Fortunes of Maya. And, I write about the interior lives of kids. My first three published books are all girls. So I would like to say the interior lives of girls, but I have recently finished a book about a boy. So now I say kids. And so in this particular book, The Many Fortunes of Maya, Maya is a 12-year-old soccer champion who loves her family, her flute, and the fortunes that she collects from fortune cookies. She has put all of her fortunes on a wheel of fortunes that she spins every day for advice and good luck. And so she is having a little bit of a challenging summer. She's a daddy's girl, and she's the only child, but there's a little bit of conflict in her family right now. So I'm going to read to you a couple of excerpts from chapter 2, where she is in the middle of a soccer game, not just any soccer game, but the championship soccer game. All right, so every chapter starts with a fortune. So I'm going to read the chapter title and the fortune. All right, so chapter 2, let's go play some football. And the fortune is, your talents will be recognized and rewarded. Let's go play some football. La, 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 la. That's Daddy, dragging the L for extra drama. He yells this at the beginning of every game, giving it his whole heart and soul. His gleaming bald head thrown back, hands cupped around his mouth, no shame. He takes a deep breath and lets it rip. Is it embarrassing? Absolutely. But I love it because I love him. Mama says Daddy's a soccer snob, calling it football like that. They both grew up right here in Georgia, so they know what the word football means to everybody else. But Daddy doesn't care. He fell in love with soccer a million gazillion years ago, back when he was my age. Even though he yells, let's go play some football at the beginning of every game, we're almost done with this one. He's rallying the Astros because if someone doesn't hurry up and score before time runs out, our last game will end in a tie. Nobody wants a tie. especially not Daddy and me. I sneak a look at the clock. 2 minutes left, still enough time to win. I never, ever give up, not until the final whistle blows. But no one is where they should be. Come on, I shout to anyone who will listen. Keep it together, MJ, I remind myself, blowing out a big puff of air. I get my love of soccer from Daddy, but my firecracker fuse from Mama. And then I see it, clear as day, the perfect opening for a shot on goal. I pass it to Misha. The crowd rumbles. This is it. Misha takes one touch, just one, and boom, she smashes a rocket just past the keeper's fingertips and into the top corner. A thing of beauty. When the whistle blows to end the game, the groan on the other side of the field is drowned out by our parents going wild, cheering, whooping it up. I can't help but wonder if Mama is one of them, if she's smiling at least. Mama is not showy. Daddy is a pick you up, swing you around, yell, I love you across the field type. Mama is a squeeze your hand, caress your face, and whisper in your ear type. She doesn't use a lot of words or volume to tell you she's worried or happy or mad. She does it in looks and touches and small movements. One is not better or worse than the other. They're just different. Though she's stingier with her smiles than Daddy is, she seems to be giving them even less lately. I notice it most at the games or whenever someone brings up soccer. But even outside of soccer, her smiles seem shallow now. They start and stop at her face. When was the last time she smiled a real smile, a deep one, the kind that starts all the way from your toes, rumbles up through your belly, and lights up everything around you? Weeks? Months? I'm not exactly sure. It's been gradual, like the dimmer switch in our living room. It starts at full brightness, but you can ease the switch down until the darkness is bigger than the light and the shadows take over the whole room. It's cool when you're watching a movie. It's not so cool when you're watching your mom. So I'll stop right there and kind of see what we're setting up there. And so that's just a little bit to kind of show you. I tend to write about being true to yourself. All of my books talk about that. The importance of inner wisdom and courage. So those are some things I hit on with my books. And I'd like to ask you, Payal, to read for us a little bit.
That was so good and a tough one to follow up. But I'm going to talk about the first book in the Magic Gem series, which is my most recent novel. Both these books are the first two in a series of four, and the first two just launched, I would say, April 21st, so not too long ago. And so uh, these books are for ages 7 to 10 and for kids who have just begun to read independently. And so for these books, I had to learn to sort of write for a slightly younger audience because, like Nicole, my debut was middle grade, so 8 to 12. And so it was a really difficult and then a really fun exercise for me to learn how to write, full stories, but using slightly simpler language and simpler plots. But I love them just as much. So the books follow four friends, and each friend gets to lead each book. And in this book, we're going to follow Lily. All the gems of the friends have magical powers of the elements. So there's water, fire, air, and earth. Lily is a water gem, and it is her responsibility to protect all aquatic creatures and nature around her. And so I will read a little bit from the first chapter. And her magic is that she can transform into a mermaid, as witnessed on the cover. Okay. Chapter 1. Lily Willowgel dove headfirst into the sparkling waters of Lake Sapphire. The moment she slipped under the surface, her legs transformed into a beautiful mermaid's tail. It twinkled in shades of dewdrop blue. Flicking her tail, Lily glided deeper into the water. Her lavender hair, pinned with seashells, floated behind her like a cloud of petals. Lily blinked twice and turned on her aquavision powers. Instantly, the underwater world rippled into focus. The bottom of the lake shimmered with a soft golden light. Pearly shells of every size peeked out from the sand like hidden treasures. A colorful coral garden swayed in the gentle current. A school of glimmerfish darted through it, flickering like tiny rainbows. They twirled around Lily, calling her to play. "Not today, Glimmerlings," Lily said. Tiny bubbles floated out of her mouth. She itched to join them, but Lily was on a mission. As a magic water gem, it was her job to protect all aquatic life in lakes, oceans, and rivers. Plus, with her magic, she could transform into a mermaid whenever she wanted to. But Lily's magic wasn't complete. She hadn't earned any of her gemstones yet. Every magic gem in the land of Elementus needed something special to make their power stronger. Enchanted gemstones. With every gemstone earned, a gem's magic grew more powerful. Lily spun on her tail. A string of familiar squeals caught her attention. She grinned and dashed ahead until she spotted a family of gopher otters splashing near the shallows. Lily watched their little webbed feet, round ears, long fluffy tails, and soft fur that glowed like 1,000 sparkle bugs at night. But her stomach nodded. "I can do this," she said. Her main job was to perform the gopher otters' weekly checkups. But things weren't turning out quite as well as she had hoped. Lily swam up to the surface. "Hey, friends," she called out, trying to sound casual. The otters circled her, chirping playfully. "This is my chance," she thought. As Lily stretched out her hands, the otters realized it was checkup time. In a blur, they scattered in every direction. "Wait!" Lily shouted, chasing after them. The otters squealed as if they were playing a game of water tag. When she finally caught one of the otters, he wriggled free, jumped on her head, and swung from her hair. The otters and the magic gem standing on the shore burst into giggles. Lily wanted to hide underwater. She was totally failing at otter checkups and at being a water gem. The water around her shimmered, and Lily snapped out of her thoughts. A glittering turquoise tail fin swished towards her. Lily's eyes widened. It was her mother, Guru Jasmine. She was one of the 4 magic guru gems on the island. "I'm here, Lily Doo," her mother called out. Lily wanted to vanish under the waves at the sound of her pet name in public. "Need any help?" she asked, as her long blue hair slipped elegantly over her shoulder. Before Lily could stop her, her mother called forth the magic of her gemstones. Swirls of peacock blue, rose red, ivy green, and petal pink flowed out of her shimmering gemstone bangles. They trailed behind her like a sparkling robe as she zipped across the shallows at turbo speed and gathered all the otters. "Mama, you didn't have to come!" Lily's cheeks burned from having her mother help her in front of all the other gems. "There now, gopher otters can be tricky little creatures," her mother said, lifting Lily's chin to meet her gaze. A warm kindness shone from her sea blue eyes. Lily fidgeted with the seashell in her hair. Her mother was always so patient with her. "Come, let me show you again." Guru Jasmine scooped up an otter, checked its heart, lungs, and paws, and then let it splash back into the water. "See, I know you can do it too." Lily's heart sank. Her mom made it look so easy. Even though Lily tried her best, she never seemed to get it right. If she had her gemstone, she could make her mother proud and not need any rescuing. But only the bravest and the most skilled magic gems earned their gemstones. Lily knew gems who had risked their own lives to save another, calmed raging storms to guide schools of lost fish home, and even made vines grow strong and fast to save animals trapped in quicksand. Unfortunately for Lily, if she was one thing, it was not brave. Her list of fears could fill an ocean. As for her skills, she couldn't even get the otters to listen to her. "Why don't you give it a try?" encouraged her mother. Lily nervously reached for Cotton, a young albino otter with the cuddliest white fur. To her surprise, Cotton jumped into her arms under Guru Jasmine's gaze. Lily quickly completed the checkup and let him go. "Good job," her mother said. She gave Lily a proud pat on the cheek before swimming off to help someone else. Feeling a splash of courage, Lily tried again. But once again, the otter sprang out of her grip. In a flash, the rest escaped too. Lily flopped onto the water. "I'm officially the worst water gem," she thought miserably. Lily turned back to the otters who were busy blowing bubbles at one another. Suddenly, an idea popped into her mind, sending a tingling through her scales. Will it work, she wondered? Lily didn't know, but she had to try. So
So how
That's
cute.
thanks. Uh,
Yeah.
this book, much like all my other books, except for the short story that I wrote, the young adult short story, is in the realm of fantasy, which is my favorite genre to write. And I feel like with my stories, um, I the themes that I always strive to include are empowered, joyful South Asian representation. And
Mm,
so even with this book, I made her look like a little Indian princess. She has a lot of like jewelry that is similar to what Indians wear, especially when they get married. And um, whenever I can, I try to, sprinkle in a little bit of my culture and heritage in there. But really, my passion is to write stories um, that celebrate the joy um, of being South Asian. And so, yeah, that's kind of me and my stories.
I love that. And I also I noticed that you said empowerment.
Mhm.
That reminds me a little bit of some of the things that I like to explore with um, courage and inner wisdom. But is there anything that leads you to focus on empowerment?
Um, yeah, I think I feel like empowerment and joy are two things that um, I feel very strongly about in the stories I write because I find that, even as a kid growing up, I grew up in India. I devoured books. But even in literature, up until very recently, the number of books I find, especially with underrepresented communities, especially the South Asian community,
Hmm.
are very heavy on the side of, trauma stories, tragic stories, the immigrant struggle. And I just feel that we end up getting typecast as, um, you know, a culture that carries so much baggage and that is, is so full of hardship, when in reality, all cultures carry that, and
Mhm.
we have an equal side to us,
Mhm.
which is that joyful side, that pride in the culture that we have, in the empowered sort of feeling that we all feel as we go about our lives. And so I think for me, it's so important to have a South Asian character, a main character who is joyful, who is empowered. That doesn't mean that my characters don't feel sad or don't go through hardships. They do, but to show kids. And I always say that, I've had over the course of my publishing career, so many people who come and tell me that, oh my God, I know just the Indian kid to give your book to. My neighbor down the street, she's Indian, he's Indian, they're going to love your book. And I love that because I'm writing my book for them, but I am equally writing it for kids who don't look like me so that they can also see that kids who look like me can embody these roles, can be the heroes of the stories, can have magic, can be the ones who save the day and are not the ones who are in the background or the sidekick, you know. And so, yeah, I feel joyfulness and empowerment are like massive themes that I keep in mind before writing my stories,
I love
which
that.
I'm sure there's an element that of commonality for you too in that narrative.
There is. I just in so as the writer, I feel, I'm the instrument, right? So whatever I believe to be true about the world is what comes through in my writing. And I'm generally a very optimistic and,
Mhm.
you know, joyful, positive person. And so even though, like for instance, with this, we kind of ended on a oh no sort of a note when I was reading aloud. My books are generally, at least at this point, safe, sweet, cozy books because that's kind of my outlook. Um, and I grew up as a very shy kid. Um, like that's my enduring memory of childhood was being shy. And so that's one of the reasons why I really focus on being true to yourself because I
Mhm.
felt like as a shy person, it was very hard for me to speak my mind, whether it was in class feel
Hmm.
safe to be myself, to advocate for myself. And I felt like that also extended into adulthood. And so
Hmm.
as an adult, I want to be the type of person that encourages children to be like, you can
Yes.
do it, that,
Yes.
if you have more courage, and we may talk about this a little bit more later, there's the world opens up so much more. So, you can still do it scared, but just give it a shot. And similarly, thinking about growing up, as a teen, I had my heart broken. I was like super in love. But
Haven't we all?
unfortunately, I know, but it's like the my boyfriend at the time basically completely gaslit me into
Mm.
making me not believe what I knew to be true inside. Right. So I knew something to be true. He convinced me over time that I didn't know it. And so I started to believe what wasn't true. And it impacted me so deeply once I realized that I was in fact right and I let myself be led astray. That again is something that I try to write, you know, into all of my stories. This idea of your inner knowing, hearing that inner ding, what do you really think? How are you really feeling? And how can you express that? And I try to really give opportunities for the kids to recognize that, oh, I knew something wasn't right. And
Hmm.
what action are you going to take once you feel that something is off, or that's not what you want to do? So that's something that I really am intentional about, to just kind of give them encouragement to say, believe in yourself, because you, and to really develop, kind of hone that inner voice so that they can hear themselves even better.
Oh my God, I love that. And that is so infinitely important, and I feel like, especially in children's literature, there are so many kids who find themselves still being the minority in their classroom. And it is
Mm-hmm.
hard to speak up and stand up for yourself when everybody else looks different, you feel a little different. And so um, I think those themes in your books are just so infinitely important. So then I want to ask you,
Yes.
when did you know that you were a writer?
It's it's such a good question, because the first answer is I've never known a world without me identifying as a writer. Like, I don't remember learning how to write. I just always remember being a writer. And my mother was a librarian. Shout out to librarian. She was a public school librarian, but she kept some of my early published works. So our school newspaper, I have clippings of when I first grade me writing a poem or a joke
Nice.
or whatever it was,
Yeah,
in our school newspaper. So I actually show it when I go on school visits. That
that's
this
so cute.
counts. I was writing then.
Yeah.
So I always identified as a reader and a writer. Like, I don't remember learning how to do either of those things. But then there was this period of time when I wasn't doing what I thought was writing. And so when I asked myself, what do I mean? I realized that I wasn't writing publicly,
Hmm.
and I wasn't writing for an audience. So
How
I
old were
felt,
you when this was
this
sort
was older. I was older. So
okay?
I was grown. In fact, I was a teacher at the time. And I think that really kind of skewed, something about that situation made me feel as though, since I'm not writing for anyone else,
Hmm.
therefore I'm not a writer. And it's
Right.
kind of interesting now, kind of being, a professional writer, I'm
Yeah.
starting to realize the importance really of separating those things. Like, a writer is one who writes, and it's not about the audience. You are the
Hmm.
audience.
Yep.
So, but anyway, so my whole life. What about you?
That that is so interesting because mine is exactly the opposite.
Okay.
I I never identified myself as a writer. I never thought about myself ever wanting to be a writer, or that, not even that wanting to, never thought that I could ever be one. Like, it was never an option that ever entered my head. And I think it was for a number of reasons. Um, I love to read. I feel like you would be hard pressed to find a writer who isn't a reader at first, at
Mhm.
least. Um, but I never saw myself in books. And by that, I mean, I never saw an Indian kid be a main character. If at all, it was very stereotypical and they were always side characters. Um, no one in, forget inner circle, even my outer circle, like never knew of a writer. I didn't think this was possible. Like, who does this for a profession? It just seemed like these magical beings, really, in a lofty space somewhere gets to be writers and write stories. Um, and so for me, it was a very conscious decision um, to step into writing when I was around 23 years old. And, I studied management. It was such a long-winded route for me to enter publishing. Somehow I landed up in magazine publishing and I sort of wiggled my way into writing articles and I became the features editor for this lifestyle magazine. And I think that is when, I didn't even recognize, I think, truly that it was my like latent desire somewhere to write. The only writing I have done as a kid was, and this is going to date me, and I don't know how many of you will remember, but I loved watching Captain Planet on Cartoon Network as a kid, like loved, loved, loved. To this day, I can recite the whole like soundtrack. And I used to write Captain Planet fan fiction. I didn't even know I was writing fan fiction, but I have this vivid memory of going on an overnight a train ride with my family, and all the kids are playing in the bottom bunk, and I am huddled in the top bunk, and I am on these fullscape sheets. I am writing an episode that I have created with these characters. And this must have been when I was 10, 11. And then I don't think I wrote anything except like a few journal entries when I was 17, 18, and then that was it. Anyway, so I was, found myself at 23 working for a magazine and writing these articles, which really ignited like my love for writing. And then quickly, I was so frustrated working at the magazine because you had to follow trends and you had to write what your editor told you to, and based on the theme, and if it was summer or winter or whatever, and festivals and things like
Mhm.
that. And I was so loving that fact that I could write, but hated what I was writing. And so I was like, I didn't even know what I wanted to write. But I remember this one Saturday morning where I opened up my computer and I was like, I want to write something. I was itching to, and again, I had no idea what, but there was a scene in my head, and it was about an 8-year-old kid who runs into this forbidden forest at the back of their house, and something strange and magical and mysterious happens with a tree, and she runs back out. It must have been all of like 150 or 200 words. That's about it. And I remember staring at my laptop screen, like reading what I had written, and just being like mind blown that, oh my God, this scene that lived in my head is now on paper. Um, and it was such an epiphany. I think it just changed that weekend. I like plotted the whole book, and it turned out to be my debut novel. And so for me, I think writing was a very difficult, a very conscious and endeavor that I continue to have to be very diligent about to keep going, because none of it came naturally to me. So
That
that's
is so interesting. We actually have a lot of overlaps, you
really,
know.
yeah.
Yeah, because I have a journalism degree,
Mhm.
and I thought that I would actually be a features writer. That's what I was interested in
Oh
doing. Yeah,
my
yeah.
God.
So,
Yep,
so I'm just
that's
like
really,
listening to you and
yeah.
laughing. And it's just interesting though because kid me didn't imagine being a professional writer. Well, I
Okay,
did, but
yeah,
not at first. Like early kid me just knew I loved to write,
it's
right?
amazing.
And then through my life, I've known that. So I've just used that to my advantage, in school and things of that nature. So I've kind of worked both toward a professional career in writing, but also toward other professions. So I
Hmm.
didn't come to,
Yeah.
I don't mind saying that the time that I knew I wanted to write books for kids in particular, I was 8. And it was about 4 decades
Yeah.
before I published my first book. So, but I kind of always chose other things instead of writing
Hmm.
at the time. Yep.
Isn't that insane
Yeah.
how I wonder if it is changing for the newer generation, which is such a creator economy, um, where in our generation, writing still just never seemed like a viable profession or something that I think, especially as women, you're like, oh no, that's still just a hobby, even though I feel like I am drawn towards doing this. This is just something we put on the back burner. Um, because I don't think it's uncommon that for so many writers and then published authors that were always like you, dabbled in writing, wanted to be a writer, but just ended up fighting for it and like taking it like, no, I'm taking the bull by its horns and I'm doing this like so much later because it's a scary thing to do.
Mm.
Yeah. Um, so then my next question is,
Yes, where should we go
um,
next?
yes, how much or what role does culture and heritage play in your writing? How important is it in the stories that you tell?
It's it's very important.
Hmm.
And at the same time, so I'm going to tell you a story, but before that, so I grew up in Atlanta and I'm Black. And so I grew up in my neighborhood. There was Black people everywhere, and I grew up middle class, and so there's middle class Black people everywhere. In kindergarten, Black students; elementary school, Black teachers, Black students, Black principal. Same thing in middle school. Same thing in high school. Same thing in college. My parents are both Black, and my grandparents are Black. My great grandparents are Black, and I say all that to say, for me, being Black was just life, right? I wasn't an other and only, I wasn't a raisin in the milk and things like that we sometimes say. It was just, I'm Black, everybody's Black, everything I know is Black, right? So when I come to writing books, I write from that place of just assumed Black understanding.
Hmm.
So I don't like, okay, now here's the Black way of
Yeah.
saying it, because I never experienced life that way.
Yeah.
Um, in fact, it wasn't until grad school that I, actually experienced a different way of being, where I was actually a minority
Hmm.
in the city, in anything. And so it was just like, oh, that's interesting, that's different. But when I started writing for children for publication, that's when I really had more consciousness about the fact that what I take for granted as the way it is isn't the way that other people accept or think the world is. And so a story that I have is that in fact, in this book, in The Many Fortunes of Maya, now I have to say, I love my editor and I love the editor who was my editor before her. But in The Many Fortunes of Maya, there is a moment where Maya is upset about something. She's mad, she's sad, she's just upset. And it's a public place. And the reason that she's upset and the place where she is, she cannot show that she's upset.
Hmm.
But as a kid, she's like 11, 12. She doesn't know that you just can't always show your emotions. And in this particular case, it was completely inappropriate. She could not show. So her mother was right there. And her mom elbows her, fix your face.
Oh my
Now,
God. Yeah. Okay. Hmm.
now, to me, that's what happened.
Yeah.
My editor read that and was like, the mom is so mean. You've got to take
Oh,
that
child
out.
service. Yeah.
And I was like, what now? And it did something to me, because it really made me think, like,
Hmm.
is this, like, that was the first time anybody had ever said anything to me
Yeah.
that was mean. Like, to me, that was very standard. Okay.
Yeah.
So I left it, went ahead, did all the other edits, left that one, and so for various reasons, capitalism, restructuring, that
Hmm.
editor left. And by the time I got through within my next draft, I gave it to a totally different editor.
Yeah.
So neither editor is a Black woman.
Okay.
And same thing happened.
Mhm.
She got to that scene where, again, it was totally inappropriate for Maya to be making this face. So her mom is like elbowing
Yep.
her, fix your face. Why is she so mean? That mom is so mean. What are you going to do to make the mom less mean? And I was just like, so I'm like, am I crazy? So I have to go like do a check with my girlfriends and be like, nah,
Is
I
have
know
I
how I
misread?
grew up,
Yeah.
but am I missing something? And so literally the day that I turned that in, the very next day, I happened to be on Zoom with my two coworkers, and they were like talking about something as I popped in. And one of them said to the other, "Girl, fix your face." And I just started clapping. I was like,
Validated.
I was
Yeah.
like, see, I knew it. I knew it. This is, and so anyway, Mia's laughing. So it's
Yeah.
just like, this is a thing that you have to decide, is it, how true are you really willing to be, and
Mhm.
are you going to fight for what you know is right? And I was like,
Yeah.
that is how you, that's what we say, that's just a
Right.
normal thing to say. And so everybody doesn't know what normal is, and so that comes into my thinking when I'm writing. So
Did
anyway,
you manage to keep it in the book?
yeah, it's in there, it's definitely in there. I had to keep it in there because the
It's how
people
it
who
is.
read that book would know exactly what was happening and why.
Yep.
It would not even be a question. It was going to be, girl, fix your
Yep.
face, which is what happened. So anyway, so what about you?
And so that is really interesting because I didn't know that we would have, again, such similarities. Because, again, I grew up in India. I grew
Mm-hmm.
up in a country where everyone looked like me, spoke like me, and we're very diverse, yes. But in my ecosystem in Mumbai, very much the average. Um, and so it was very, so again, it's a two-parter. So this is me answering, or, sort of responding to how you didn't feel like the other. And I never felt like the other. It was only when I came to the US to get my
Mm,
master's, my MFA in creative writing, because, again, I had studied management and had no formal education in writing or literature or anything, and came to the US to learn how to write a book. And it was the first time I encountered the word person of color. And I was like, who's that? Um,
right, right,
because
right.
we are all shades in India. We go from very light skin to very dark skinned.
Yeah.
And no one is ever called, yes, we definitely have discrimination in terms of skin color, and we have the same anglicized, lighter is more superior. So we definitely have that. But I was still never, nobody looked at me and said, oh, you are a person of color.
Right.
I was never called BIPOC. I didn't know what that was. I had never felt like the other ever in my whole entire existence. And so that was a very eye-opening experience for me. I remember initially I was very against being called a person of color because it again othered me. And I was like, why are you othering
Mm,
me?
mm-hmm.
I'm like, as a white person calling me that, I'm like, white is also a color. And it was really more about like, why are you making me separate? Anyway, you guys
Mm,
always are keeping this separation, and this is further separating us. And then, eventually I realized that, sometimes in publishing and in many things in life, it's an industry and a business. And if I'm going to use that term, I'm going to use it to shout, from the rooftops about all of us POCs who need our stories out there in the world.
mm,
But it was very similar in that I was like, my normal is not somebody else's normal. And
mm-hmm.
so much that I took for granted is, again, so different for other people. Um, but for me, it's when I culture and heritage is a huge part of my writing. And again, this is like a two-parter. The story I have is that, I mentioned the little paragraph that I wrote, those the first 150 words that popped out of my head, which eventually became this book. This
Mm,
main character who I wrote, about this girl who goes into this forest. I was so excited, and I plotted the whole thing, and then I proceeded to write about 50 to 70,000 words of this atrocious novel. This was before I came to the US or even applied. But I wrote all of that. And then I was like, okay, I think I need a little more help. And so I looked for writing workshops in Bombay and Mumbai, where I grew up, and I found one. And so I was all excited. I took my first chapter for my very first workshop session. It was the first time anyone outside of myself was going to hear these words and, read these words. And very excitedly read out my first chapter, and I was eagerly awaiting feedback. And this teacher, this stoic, incredible teacher, I remember, a very stiff sari, and she just looks at me deadpan, and she's just like, why are you not writing about your own lived experiences? Why are all of your characters white? And all my characters were white. Ria was Rose. Her brother Rohan, who goes missing, was called Bryant. They were the Bennets. I mean, it's pretty obvious where my where
Yes.
where I was drawing inspiration from. They lived in some village in the English countryside. They had scones for breakfast. I'd never had a scone my whole entire life. Um, and she was just so tired. Like she had, this was feedback she had clearly given so many times. And I
Oh
was I was
no.
pissed. I was like, that why wouldn't you say something about my prose or my imagination? And I felt so defeated, and I was a little angry. Yeah. And so I'm in the cab on the way back home. And then I was like, yeah, but like, why didn't I write about myself? And it would have been, you know, it was such a gut punch, because if I had chosen to not write about myself and made the conscious choice to write about this fictitious white family that lives in a different country, it's totally fine. But I hadn't. It was my default. Like, I realized in that moment that all of the stories I loved and I had read, and I still love them to this day, but they had unconsciously whitewashed my imagination, and that they had
Mm,
negated my own identity in my own imagination. And
mm,
it was a real gut punch. And I think from that day forward, I was like, you know, again, my heritage, my culture is going to take center stage. And I'm going to have these characters, in my stories, leading my stories, be fully enriched with them. But at the same time, I will say, I also, um, it's very important for me to have the cultural aspects and the heritage, kind of like you're saying, very seamlessly integrated into the story. I
hmm.
do not want to be didactic about it. I don't want to info
Right.
them. I don't want to educate you about, all things India and Indian culture, which I don't even think it's humanly possible to do as in a single story or by a single person. I mean, there's just so many nuances, and it's so
Mm,
varied. And so, um, I just wanted to be sprinkled, fully and completely in the story, so that almost you don't even realize that you are consuming information,
hmm.
and it's kind of just like soaking you with it. Um, and so, yes, I don't seek to, oh, I am going to talk about Diwali as, our
Right.
festival of lights, and I'm going to somehow, educate you about the mythology. No, no. I mean,
Yeah.
it's they'll just go burst firecrackers, and it happens to be Diwali, and then, like, if you need to research some more or find out more, you know what I mean? So I think
Hmm.
it's a very important part of my stories, but also it's not something that I am like, okay, now I'm going to insert something about my culture or my country in here. So
Right.
that's,
Yes.
again, something I consciously avoid and also don't feel like doing.
Yeah. No, I love that. So I'm curious,
Yeah.
you kind of touched on this, but do you draw more inspiration from your life, from your imagination, or, just where do your
Um,
stories come from?
I think so. A lot of it is imagination, also because my stories, I write fantasy is my favorite
Hmm.
thing to write, and so a lot of it is drawn from imagination. But the influences, I think, um, come a lot from India, but also from, I'm the kid of the 90s. I grew up with like MTV and the internet, and so much of my growing up was also influenced by pop culture around the world. And so it's like this nice little mesh of my own Indianness and my Indian culture, and also what I've absorbed from the world. Um, and I think, but it's the human situations that my characters find themselves in, like trying to
Hmm.
fit in, finding out who they are, understanding or navigating friendships, forming friendships. All of that, I think, comes very solidly from my middle school experience, just
Mm-hmm.
wrapped in the bow of fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
What about you?
So right now everything I've written is contemporary,
Mhm.
realistic, and I would say in general, I think about my life as a kid
Mhm.
and the things that still resonate
Mhm.
all these decades later, right? So if I
Yeah.
still, experience either emotional impact or just remember it clearly as a pivotal moment, that's
Mhm.
something that I want to consider as a seed. So like with my first book, Being Shy, that's what Just Right Jillian is about. And with The Many Fortunes of Maya, my parents did a trial separation and I'm a daddy's girl. And to me, that was my mother's fault. And so that's something that I explored with Maya. But sometimes it comes from other areas, like a project that I finished recently that isn't out in the world yet was a total flash of inspiration. And it was so
Awesome. Yeah.
exciting because it just came from nowhere. It came from watching a video of an artist play a piece of music and it lit my whole brain on fire.
Oh my
So that
God.
was just so exciting to weave in my same themes of inner wisdom and courage and being true to yourself, same things with this flash of lightning that came from nowhere. So that was just so lovely. That was so fun.
That is awesome. And that I would say is also like lightning in a bottle, just using this,
I know.
it
I'm like,
doesn't always
I
happen,
want it to
right?
happen again. Yes, it
Yeah.
doesn't, but I would love it if it did. Yeah.
That is so cool. Okay, here's a fun one. And I think it's
Okay.
an important one. I feel like for anyone who is, and I don't want to scare anyone with this answer, with this question, but I think, well, I would like to know what you think is the difference between being a writer and an author. Like, do you feel that there's a difference between the two? And if you do, what do you think are the differences?
I like this question because before I was an author, when people kept saying there was a difference, I was like, what are you talking about? But for me, it really boils down to the act of writing versus the business of writing.
Mhm.
Um,
Yep.
at least that's what I've come to now, especially since it's been a couple of years since I've published a book. And I'm thinking about that book that was so exciting to write that I was like, I felt so alive. I felt like,
Yeah.
but it's like the business part of it, like whether somebody buys it or not, whether or not they market it, if they do buy it, which is a possibility that they won't, um, is a separate concern. And so I have found myself recently having to kind of unravel my identity as author and writer back
Mhm.
apart again
Yep.
so that I can go back and write for fun, and not be thinking about what can I write to sell. So
Mm.
it's important, if you want to have your work out there, if you are
Yep.
a traditionally published author, to have the market in mind. But at the same time, that's not what makes me a writer. When I was 5 years old, I wasn't selling anything, but I was a writer. So I want to get back to that joyful identity of writing because I love it, because it's the way I think about things, it's how I process the world, it's how I make sense of things. And separately, writing um, to be out, writing art to be out in the world. Mm-hmm.
And that is such good advice because you will have people writing. Well, the part being an author is being part of the industry. Being
Yeah.
writing, you write for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yet to be published generically, just trying to as a blanket statement, if your book is is close to what the market wants,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to have a higher chance of selling. Everyone knows
Mm-hmm.
publishing is such a difficult industry to break into. So it is such a fine line. But And I find myself sometimes, like, okay, with this I have a new project that is not under contract. I'm just writing for myself and I'm really
Mm-hmm.
loving it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I have thought in mind, what were the struggles I faced with my previous books?
Mm-hmm.
What did it not have that the market wanted? And so what can I include that
Mm-hmm.
can sort of increase the marketability of this book that I have not even finished writing? And then sometimes I get so bogged down by it, and I'm just like, I think it is very important for you as a writer to be aware of what the
Mm-hmm.
market trends, so to speak, or what the market wants, what the kids, the age that you're writing for, are reading. It's so
Mm-hmm.
important for you to read what is doing well in the market because it
Yes.
is important. Like anything, like you should know the market that you're going to enter, and then write for you because, I say I love writing this new book and this new project that I'm writing. But I mean, there are days that I hate it. And there are days where I'm just like, this is so hard for me to write new words, or I'm just feeling so stuck, or whatever it is. And I feel like if you are writing for someone else, I think, and from my experience, I don't think I would be able to commit to it for as long as that book would need me to commit myself to it to finish it. It has to be something I love. It has to be because in those days where I feel so down and out, the only thing that's going to bring me back into my chair is the fact that I love the story I'm telling. You know what I mean? So I feel like, yes, think of the trends, know that, but don't simply write to them. Um, and then I also think on the other flip side of it, I think the biggest thing I learned after being a published author was like you're like a one person band. You feel like you have your marketing hat, your
Oh
events
my
hat,
goodness.
your admin hat, your accounting hat, your school visit hat, like your oh my God, I think what I'm trying these days is to, like you said, have that separation and know, like, okay, from these hours that I have that are few and far between, how much time am I going to dedicate to all of this author stuff, which is, because you booking an event and, sometimes
Mm-hmm.
you have to write a speech for an event or make a presentation for an event or, just I don't know, make
Yeah.
graphics to promote your
Yeah.
event, you know,
Yeah.
um, and how much time am I going to take away from the writing side of being the author, like the thing that drew me to this in the first place. So I think that would definitely be one of the biggest learning experiences and a continuous daily battle of how much time am I allocating to author self-pile versus writer self-pile. And
Writer,
some days,
yes.
yeah, it is
Yes.
more author, and I just feel like, oh, I just, missed my writing time. And then you do the writing, and then you're like, oh, I missed this post that I was supposed to post, and now only 4 people have liked it the next day. But it's ridiculous.
Yes.
But yeah, that it shouldn't put anyone off of wanting to be a published author. But I think it is good to know what you're stepping into. And of course, you can do as much or as little as you want to once you get into it. But that is, yeah, definitely, I would say, the
Yeah.
reality of being an author in today's day and
For
age.
better or for worse, it's true. So
Um, yeah.
go ahead.
No, sorry. No, go ahead.
No, because I actually wanted to see if we can talk a little bit about writing routines and rituals and kind of
hmm
jump to those kinds of things. Do you want
Um,
to? Yeah, go.
yeah. For me, I think I have gone through so many and failed at so many. And I think the one that seems to be the most consistent for me is to have daily goals. And I
Mm,
make them as small as possible
mm-hmm,
because
mm-hmm,
yeah, if I don't put a word count because then it's depressing if I don't meet it. And so it's like I'm gonna write, I'm gonna finish the scene of this chapter today. Like it's small.
mm-hmm,
It could be just 200 words, it could be 500 words.
mm-hmm,
Um, Really my goal every day is to keep that daily goal so little so that when I come to it, I'm not overwhelmed. And then
mm-hmm,
hopefully I can enter that flow state because once that flow state is achieved, I feel like it's magic. But
mm-hmm.
getting into it sometimes is difficult for me. I have a 7-year-old and there's, school pickups and classes and food to prepare and house things to do and life to lead. And so much comes in the way. I mean, then my phone is the biggest distraction. And so, but I have found that I create a small goal in my head every morning, like this is what I have to do. And sometimes it's even like, okay, I have to post this post and then I'm going to write this scene and that's it. That's all I'm going to do. Or I'm going to, reply to 3 emails and that's about it. Um, and I think that has really worked for me to feel, yeah, more productive than not productive in a given month, say. What about you?
Yeah. No, I'll answer it from a couple different ways. One, I definitely believe in teeny tiny itty
Mm-hmm.
bitty goals. The
Mm-hmm.
smallest, the smaller the better. Like really
Exactly.
tiny, especially if I
Yep.
am at the beginning of anything. It's like
Yes.
less
Yes.
is more,
Yes.
to the point
Yes.
where like
Yes.
sometimes my goal is 3 sentences, and
Oh my God, I love it.
or the and maybe the worst 3 sentences possible, like whatever, like
I'm
anything
going
that.
to take that actually. I'm going to take that. I'm going
Oh
to
yeah,
use that. Like go even smaller than what I usually go, which is, yeah, I'll
even
do
so,
three.
like teeny tiny, especially. And so I started it a while ago, years and years ago, but definitely during the pandemic, which is when I wrote 2 of these books. It was like, what can I,
Yeah.
teeny tiny. But just in general, one of the things I do, I never I never face a blank page.
Mm-hmm.
So I have kind of this elaborate pre-writing process that involves thinking while I'm out exercising. So if I'm running or walking, I'm a retired runner now. I've retired recently
Okay.
after like 20 years of being a runner. I'm
Wow.
like, I'm a walker now. So,
Yeah.
but that movement time used to be pre-writing.
Okay, can I
Um,
interject?
yes,
So,
sure.
okay, you are, for those who do, run or walk and,
Yeah.
exercise such an important part. Okay, you're doing this physical moving activity. How are you, is it just in your head or do you have an app or your phone or like, are you voice noting yourself? Like, are you converting that into anything tangible or are you just like letting it mull over as you're running slash walking
It
slash
depends.
exercise? Okay.
90% of the time it's all in my head.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Working it out.
working, I'm working something out. I'm trying out scenes. I'm
Mm-hmm.
listening to dialogue. I'm moving things around, and I'm just doing the whole thing in my head. Except sometimes when I know, oh, this is this thing. If it's something specific like a line of dialogue that I might not remember, then I call it pull over. I'll move over to the side and stop and pull out my phone, and I'll
Yeah.
either dictate it or type it. The rest of the time, like when I had to revise one of my books, I actually didn't read the book for a month. I didn't read the book.
Mhm.
I revised the whole thing in my head for a month. And
The
then,
whole book.
yes, I didn't even, in fact, when I went to go implement my revisions, I didn't even read the book then. I just was like, I know where everything is. It
I'm
was
just
a,
going to go in.
yeah, yeah.
Have
But
you
it's because
replicated this
it's no, but
process? No.
I haven't needed to. I haven't needed
Okay.
to. It was just, that was a hard draft. This was during the
Yeah.
pandemic. Anyway, I'm just saying that to say
Yeah.
I used the time in my head, right? And that's what I love about, my process. I've never come into the blank page because I
Hmm.
I lean into daydreaming, to thinking,
Yep.
napping is writing, journaling. I like to free write with my journal. And then when I'm ready to write, I have the outline that I've created. I know my characters. And on the day that I'm like, okay, I'm working on chapter 22, and I'm working on this scene, the first thing I'm going to do, besides all that thinking for that day, is take my journal and journal what I think the scene is. So it's a
Nice.
free write. So
Hmm.
then by the time I get to the page, I'm transcribing. I've already figured it out. So I'm never starting from scratch. Yeah.
that is very cool that you say that, because I am very similar to that, and I never even thought about it in that sense, because I do, I'm like, well, you start on a blank page, so you are confronted with a blank page. But I have never ever said, oh my God, that is just such a scary thought, to sit in front of a blank page not knowing what you're going to put on there. So I think that's really
Go
great.
pantsers go, but not me.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, go pet, absolutely.
The pantsers can
But
do
you're
it, but
right.
not me.
And I think that, even in these daily goals that I say, I feel like I sometimes even substitute writing. Like if I can't, if I don't, even if I have this small goal of writing and I still can't do it, that day I will make sure I'm reading or doing something, even if it's me taking 5 extra minutes in the shower, just like sort of working out a plot, or like just thinking more about my character. Like I think it's very important that the process of creating a book, a manuscript, does not only lie in putting words on your paper or your screen. There is
Mm.
so much, like you said, of pre-writing that is part of the writing process. And then I think everyone should give themselves grace in those moments when they cannot put words on a page for whatever reason. But at least if you are thinking about it in some shape or form, even if you're watching something and you're like, oh my God, that could work in some shape or form in my story, or I could, think on those lines. Like, as long as you are really thinking about that, at the back of your mind, I think that really helps basically
Mhm.
come to quote unquote a blank page, but not really come unprepared. So that's really cool. So I'm guessing,
Mhm.
do you ever get a writer's block?
No, and
No,
that's the reason why. So
I
it's
still do.
because,
Very much
yeah,
so.
I feel like if there's a reason that I'm not writing, it's not because I'm blocked. It's just because of the other reason, right? So if I'm sad, I'm sad. That's not writer's block. I just need to go grieve. Or if I'm stressed out, that's not writer's block. I need to de-stress. But if I don't know something, I just need to go figure it out. So I'm never just kind of like, now what? I have nothing. There's always a thing I can do. I can side write, I can journal, I can talk to my characters, I can take a nap. Like all that counts. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah. All
mean,
that counts
I
as
will.
writing.
It does. That's what I'm saying. It does. It very much counts as writing. Yeah. For me, I think I do hit it. I did hit it for this story that I was talking about, my new book. I thought about it a lot. I had written, about 30,000 words of it, and it just ended up going in a direction that I didn't want it to go.
Mm.
And I had these 4 chapter books to write, so I had to stop, and I just felt like I had written myself into a wall, and it took me almost a year and a half to sort of get out of that. I mean, there was a lot of other writing that was happening on the side, so I couldn't really devote that much time to sort of unraveling uh, the the block, essentially. Like, I didn't know what to do to sort of back myself out of it and go in the direction I wanted it to go. But in that 1.5 year period, every time it was always at the back of my head, always at the back. And I have, I use WhatsApp a lot because my family's in India, and WhatsApp is the best when it comes to sending messages and video calling. So I have created a chat with my own self. And so every single time I had an idea, an epiphany, another character that I could add in the book or whatever, I would just send messages to myself. And so that I was like, whenever I sit down to write that book, I can just go through this chat that I have sent to myself. I have voice notes in that, I have images in that, I have videos in that, like anything that I thought would recreate like that moment. I was like, oh, this would is what would change it, or this would help me.
Mm.
And so I recommend that if you want to send messages out to yourself to unblock your writer's block. Well, this was great. I feel like if, I would love to open it up for questions if we have any questions from the audience.
Yeah, that's a good time.
And
Yeah.
Carolyn, if you want to jump in too, if you have any questions you would like to ask, and maybe, any in the chat.
Oh,
Oh, what a delightful conversation. I love the
yay.
way that you both went from your own your own processes to the joyful writing for joy and empowerment, to the young people that you write for, your cultural ambitions. And Nicole, I'm with you on writer's block. I don't believe in writer's block. I think that whenever we are blocked, there's a reason for it. And so, yay. And I just love so much of this. And I am very, wait, let's first of all, see if there's any. Oh, good. There's 2 in the chat. Let's see what we have here. And a second. Okay. Just a moment. All right. Okay. Michelle wants to know if have you ever hired outside help to manage marketing, social media, etc., or do you do it all yourself? Why or why not?
So yes, for me, I have. So with my very first book, I tried I wanted to be traditionally published. I queried agents for a year and a half. I came very close, but ultimately I was rejected. And then I found a smaller independent press at the time that was run by a South Asian Indian woman, second generation American. I'd sent her my manuscript. She loved it, and it was great. We had a great partnership. And so then my first book was published by a smaller press, an independent press. They had been publishing, I think, picture books for 5 years prior to my book, and like mine was the first middle grade. And again, this was in the time of the pandemic, and so I had a very honest conversation with her because it was a small press. You can talk to the publisher directly. This isn't like I was, with a bigger press where those people are just they don't exist. So I learned that I thought that, for giving my book a better shot, maybe I should hire a publicity firm to help me with pushing my book out and marketing. Couple of things I learned from that experience. Well, would I do it again? No. Uh, I think, I mean, it's, again, hindsight is 2020, but they definitely helped. I just don't know if it was worth the money. I think at the time I put in about $3,000 to have them help me for I think it was like 5 months or 6 months, a few months before release or a month before release to kind of get like the buzz going, and then for the subsequent next few months. They were fantastic to work with. They pitched me for a lot. I did lots of podcasts, and I wrote a lot of guest posts, and I did interviews with bloggers. They did like a Bookstagram tour, and I think so that was really great. And I think it was also very helpful for me to understand what book marketing, was like. What did it entail? Um, Having been in the industry now 5 years in, 4 years, 5 years in, I feel like it doesn't really move the needle that much. Yes, you might get more, your book might get featured in certain blogs, but again, it's not like hiring the firm is getting my book on Oprah's list or, on a list where it would actually make a significant difference. And so was it worth my $3,000? I don't think so. And so, I'm again not saying don't do it. If you have the funds, I don't think it's a waste of money, but I just don't think for me it is. I would rather use that. I would use that money for, I don't know, printing my bookmarks and my swag and my stickers and, maybe funding going to a festival or bigger conferences. I might as well use that money there where I would actually meet teachers and librarians and be able to talk about my book. um, so yeah, so I've never used a firm since, but it wasn't a smaller press, and so I did use it.
How about you, Nicole? Have you ever hired?
I did actually for my most recent book. We were given, I heard advice when I was a new author that it's better to have a longer trail before you have a publicist or have publicist help, or your book has to be very topical. So it is very risky. And in terms of publicity, I mean, part of the issue or part of the reason why I did it was because my first book was actually, even all my books are with HarperCollins, but I was with a different publisher and HarperCollins acquired that publisher. And so when I was with a smaller publisher, Houghton Mifflin, I had a publicist. And when we got acquired by Harper, we are still assigned a publicist, but they allocate resources in a totally different way. So I could see the drop off in the way that my books were handled. Just because I wasn't a lead title, and lead titles get treated differently. That's just a fact. And so by the time my third book came around, I said, well, let's just give it a try and see. And it wasn't a topical book. A lot of things were happening at that time. We didn't get the copies on time to the publicist. So there were a lot of different things that happened that made it so it didn't have its best shot. And that's kind of a problem with publicity in general. But just kind of for ongoing media and all of that, it's really not a good use of money because authors don't actually make that much money. So, you're really deciding if you want to spend your own money on things. It's really the question. And so because there's no guarantee, most of the time the answer is no, that's not a good use of your money. The best use of your resources is your creative energy to do your work. That's really the best answer for most people most of the time. But because we feel like we would like to help control and move the needle,
Yes.
we still want to give it a try.
Yep.
But almost every author will tell you the same thing, that you feel like you have some impact, but if you do, it's usually luck. And that's just the truth.
It's just that exactly. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Have time for maybe one or two more questions, so we'll start with this one from Taylor. This was a great conversation. Thank you. As an educator who is very worried about our literacy crisis in today's technology-driven world, what are some ways we can encourage students to write?
I think that one, just like I would encourage kids to read for pleasure. I would encourage kids to write for pleasure, but also to write for curiosity. So there's a lot of things that are going on in the world that are interesting to them that don't necessarily show up naturally in the classroom. And so to the degree that teachers can be creative and welcoming and to let their students' curiosities come in, they will more naturally be willing to write about the things that they are interested in. Yeah. Similarly, the things that they are experts in. So if you kind of allow your kids to, like I had a class clown in my classroom. And so sometimes we'd say, here's when you can do your comedy set, and that was like a thing that we just gave him the time so that he turned it off the rest of the time because he knew he was going to have that time. I think the same thing is true where we can ask them, well, what, Artemis, did you watch the launch? And maybe that's something that I can weave into my language arts class some kind of way to give them that opportunity to write about it in their own terms. And I think, also just having conversations about writing or making it a social activity where maybe we all watch a movie together and let's be a critic and we can write our critiques, just kind of creative things like that, in order to get them to be willing to notice things and use their own interest and expertise as the tools, as opposed to let me teach you how to write. Here's the 5 paragraphs and here's the structure. Let's start with the interest and then work out and build the skill from there.
Yeah, I completely agree.
There's a comment that you must hear from Mariana. Thank you both for all of your amazing insight. No, wait, which one? I'm sorry, it's from Candace that I was looking at. I'm so sorry. All right, she said, this is awesome. My 10-year-old daughter just started her own book club and is actually reading Just Right, Jillian. She is also
Yay.
writing a book and has sat here and taken notes.
Oh,
That's
Yay.
awesome.
Fantastic.
Yay.
that's an awesome daughter.
Awesome
Awesome.
daughter.
Yay.
Yes. And then let's see, I'll do this last one from Mariana. Thank you both for all of your amazing insight. Do you have some inspiring words that someone may, oh dear, there it goes, that someone may have said to you, or words that you may have read that have stuck with you and motivated you as writers?
I I do. Do you, Pyle?
Go ahead. I think.
Um, yes. So this goes back to courage that I brought up earlier. Um, I read this quote by Daisaku Ikeda, for somebody else who was talking about going after her dreams at an older age. And when she said that that quote inspired her, and I read it and it inspired me, it made me cry and made me realize that I needed to go do it. And the quote is, um, how sad it would be to go through life wishing if only I had a little more courage. So that was kind of the spark for me to just say, all I need is a little bit more. And what will I do with that?
I love that. I think for me is not specifically a quote, but it was advice that I received, which I now perpetuate whenever anyone asks me what my advice is for writers wanting to be authors, is to just write that first draft. Like write that damn draft, no matter how horrible it is, how terrible it is. Just get it out of your head, in whatever mess, in whatever word vomit, but onto the page, because only once you have the whole thing down can you shape it and mold it. Writing is revising, writing is rewriting. And so I think, and then when you finish a project and you send it off, start working on the next one. So I think for me, those are the things, the two pieces of advice that I continuously reach to. And I know we have only a few minutes, but I do see a question from, I may be mispronouncing, but is it Adiolu? And they've sent a couple of them. And so I just quickly want to touch upon, and they ask about being challenged and finding culturally sensitive and true editors and what our experiences are. I know that's a much bigger question. But I just want to say that yes, in my experience, I had that with agents. I think my editors have been fantastic. But when I was looking for agents, finding an agent is anyways very hard business for everybody, but I definitely feel that I had that extra layer of fighting against the stereotype of what agents expect a stereotypical South Asian fantasy writer to have in their stories. I was asked if my stories had mythology because if you're an exotic culture, it has to be mythology. If it's fantasy, it can't just be a made up world that I made up. And I got pushed back because there was no mythology. And in their mind, Indian fantasy can only equal Indian mythology. I was told that my book was not Indian enough because the fantastical land was not set in India. It was this mix of East and West influences specifically written. So you couldn't pin it on a map because my characters were Indian and they were coming from India and they were going into this magical fantasy world that was not Indian. And that's how I wanted to write it. It was my experience living in India, coming to the Western world. It felt like that. But they were like, we really like the book, but we cannot market it as an Indian inspired fantasy because most of the book is not set in India. So I think you will always, everyone has their struggles, and you will find that, especially, as BIPOC writers, um, screw them, just screw them, just write what you have to write. Like you will, and then, keep persevering and you will find the editor that believes in you. And ultimately with Ria, it was, the firm, the publishing house was, started by an Indian, South Asian Indian woman, but my editor was white and she got my book like in every shape and form. And so I think you will find your people. Sometimes it takes a little longer, but yeah, don't let that stop you from being as, yeah, culturally out there than you want to be.
We have time maybe for one more question, and I want to remind everyone to please fill out the survey that's in the chat so that we can know how we're doing and how we can improve this program. So let's see. I've always been, okay, I think you just answered the one that I was looking at. What are your opinions on promoting your stories with technology? And what are the options of marketing?
I I don't I don't quite understand what you mean by promoting your stories with technology. I mean, I'm active on social media. I don't know if that's what you're referring to. That to me, and I prefer just Instagram because I'm older and TikTok is beyond me. Um, and so I'm active on Instagram. I will post, reels, and I will post about all of my events, and I will post about my books, and all the reviews and everything that I can possibly think of that will shed some light, and hopefully reach slightly more eyeballs than they would. On my Instagram profile, I look at that as not initially, I looked at it as maybe this is how I can move some books and create some sales. Quickly realized that as an individual author, that is a very difficult thing to do. So I look at it as creating, like, that's my author brand. So if anybody has heard of me and they want to know what I am about as an author, they can go to my Instagram page and they can see the things I do and they can see the books I write. And so so
Mm-hmm.
I now look at that as my brand. Not to move any books or move any needles, but just for anyone who is interested in what I do in my books, they can come there and find out more about myself. And so in that sense, yes, I use technology. But beyond that, it's it's a regular, yeah, tactile book, and that's it.
Nicole?
Yeah, I would say the same. The only thing that something that just quickly I'll say is the thing that traditional authors versus indie authors, I think indie authors are better on the business side with the
Yes,
hustling and marketing. And that's
yes,
something that traditional authors can learn how to do. I think we
I
kind of
do agree.
assumed that the publishers would do more. And so we have to
And they
kind of
don't.
learn how to be more
Yep,
entrepreneurial. So
very
that's
true.
my goal for the future. So that's about
Yeah.
that's about
And so
that.
if you can be, by all means be, because that is where marketing is. It's in the digital
Mhm.
space. So yeah.
Good point. Well, again, this was a very stimulating and beautiful conversation, and thank you uh, for being with us tonight. And with
Thank
that,
you.
we will say good night and thank everyone again for coming tonight.
Yes,
And
thank you all so much. And thank
Thank
you,
you.
Carolyn. Thank you for letting us, giving us this opportunity to have this amazing chat. And yeah, just giving us a platform to chat books and all things publishing.
so if the two of you can hang on for a minute
Mhm.
as people are filing out.